Hey kids, welcome to the Capital Life Podcast. I am your host, Abby Pagud. This is where we talk about all the things that life brings, the good, the bad, and of course, the healthy. And today's episode is called Guide on the Side, the difference between guidance and advice. We have another edition of Keeping It Real with Real People, and I have my really good friend here, Jeannie Dougherty, to join us today. Welcome to the Capital Life, Jeannie Dougherty. It's time to rock it out.
Thank you for having me, Abby. I'm excited to be here.
Jeannie is so interesting because she is a money whisperer, or what she prefers to be called is a money whisperer, which is kind of entangled into like money coach. And so what I love about that is because when it comes to receiving and it comes to opening yourself, you really have to get into your empowerment. You have to get into your flow. And since that's kind of where the focus is, I think what better way to talk about empowerment and flow than sitting down with Jeannie to explore financial authority and reclaiming our power.
Yes. I mean, I feel like every time I look at the news and I hear, all kinds of things on social media, or I follow certain investors and I'm like, oh my God. Okay, that's your opinion.
This episode of The Capital Life is brought to you by the B Minds. Small business owners, are you ready to take your growth to the next level? Say hello to the Business Minds, the most powerful all-in-one growth platform for small businesses. With the Infinite Builder, you can streamline your business operations and boost conversation rates using integrated marketing automation tools that do the hefty lifting for you. Automate lead generation, manage sales processes, and optimize every element of your business, all in one easy-to-use platform. No more juggling multiple tools or wasting time on manual tasks. The Business Minds will help you focus on what really matters, growing your business and achieving your goals. Learn more and take control of your business growth today. The B Minds, because your business deserves infinite possibilities. You ever notice how we spend all this time listening, learning, growing, and meanwhile your body's in the background like, okay, when is it my turn? That's where the focus programs at capitalhealth.com come in. They're designed to support the real things your body is asking for, whether that's relief from pain, more mobility, or just feeling better moving throughout your day. There are over 20 programs to choose from, each focused on a specific need. And if you use the code TheCapitalLife, you'll get $15 off whichever one you choose. So if your body's been waiting, this might be a good place to start. capitalhealth.com, where health meets alignment. Please like, share, and rate us on whatever platform you're listening. It's how we start to really spread the message of good in the world that needs it so much right now. If you find this helpful or insightful, don't forget to connect with us on Facebook and YouTube at Capital Health. That's KAPITOL Health. Also, visit us at capitalhealth.com and subscribe to our newsletter and get wicked awesome updates. It's funny because it's like I like to be able to just dive into our authority and really take attention to what that looks like. Because a lot of times I don't want to say the baggage, but let's face it, it's kind of like the baggage of our existence, our identity, how we view ourselves, what we think we're deserving of ends up affecting what comes to us. And then it also predicts some of like our behavioral patterns to which we get into. And a lot of people get stuck into that mindset of, like we have preconceived notions, like that wealthy people can be evil or something of that nature because of some of what we see in the world, especially today with a lot of the, I don't know, what is the name for it that you would say like people are, it's just you find out where some people had been putting their money and influencing people, and then companies even changing their titles. I mean, I remember when Johnson & Johnson was getting the bad rap in some of the chemicals that were in their products, but then Aveeno was on the rise, and then lo and behold, Johnson & Johnson owned Aveeno. So it's things like that where we start to get into this, like, awareness, but at the same time, then it's almost like we start comparing ourselves to
Yes.
them. And then therefore we think like you can't have the same, or you don't want the same because you think it means something else. Like, do you find that a lot with people that you're working with?
I
That they
find the big
twist
power
it?
question when it comes to their money and how they understand it is they may feel very overwhelmed, like it doesn't matter really where I invest my money. So Johnson and Johnson's a great example. Or I want to do this, but everyone's, evil. So like, which AI platform do you want to get on? Like, for instance, or
Right.
stay or whatever. What do I want to do in terms of supporting maybe my local businesses? Which one do I go to? And then
Right.
sometimes people are like, well, I tried, but I didn't really know what I was doing. Or if I can buy it on Amazon, I'm going to do that. Like there's all these sort of questions, and which is why I didn't think about it at the time, but my clients call me a money whisperer, not because I have every money answer for you. You actually have your own money answers. What I do is help kind of gently push aside the story, the problem, the constant questions, and the lack of inner authority that we sometimes kind of live in, especially when it comes to money. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And it's like, there is an answer here. And it is your financial agency to be like, okay, I can make up my own mind. This is why financial boycotts, when you talk about companies, are so powerful, because it doesn't have to be 100% of a boycott. It's often 1 to 3%. So like when Disney Plus got hammered, or Disney, I should say, their online streaming services, when Jimmy Kimmel was like, oops, maybe not. I mean, it was like 1% of their streaming growth said, no, goodbye.
Yeah.
And like Disney was like having a meeting, like having to figure out what they're going to do.
I love that you said it's like I went through 3 different like picturings when you were talking, because I love that you said lack of authority, like when someone's not like when they're lacking of their authority. But also I also got the like just the image of Yoda being like, the power's within you, like type of thing. And
Yeah.
and then, like, but it's very true, because I mean, if you really think about it, like there's been some major, people stepping into making a print or a statement to these companies that have been out there that have just been, I'm sorry, but I've had my own company for years.
Yeah.
I don't politicize. I don't
Sure.
get into it. I'm not going to add icons and logos to anything, because I'm not going to. I raised a company that is not biased. It is all about the living being, no matter where they are in their life, their belief systems, anything. And my personal opinion is like, businesses should not just go they're a corporation. They provide a service. They don't need to be making statements. And like, it's just bad business. But we have seen that a lot of people that were emotionally affected, or even like agreed and was like, hey, don't do that. I mean, like Target had gotten hit about a year ago, when they decided
they still haven't recovered.
They have not recovered. And then actually they got even more backlash recently, because there was something about, with the ICE raids and everything, where there was a big feud where people were actually going and purchasing like salt in large quantities, and then going and flooding and returning them. And so it was, it was a very bizarre. So they were, which is sad, because the employees were affected, because they're just dealing with stock and then back and forth. But the point is, it was deliberately done to waste their time. And then you had, what was it, Bud Light or Budweiser, that they had an issue because, their commercials had changed and did different things. And I think the Disney thing had to do with the CEO had changed something, or was that, no, that was Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel's like logo changed because they got rid of the old guy and whatever. And there was decisions that were made. But what you saw in my primary point to this very long explanation that I'll get to, it's like Abby's like, but it's like, my point is that people stood into their authority of what aligned with them, what they did and did not want to see happen. And then you started to see a shift, and it really kind of embodied, like, their empowerment was able to make an impact and say, this is what we want, this is what we're not acceptable, etc. I wish you will to share with us, how do we do that with ourselves? Because if we can do that and have that infiltrate society, it's 10,000 times harder to do it for ourselves, because, we're our worst habits, enemies, etc. Because
Sure.
we can always give advice to other people, but when it comes to ourselves, it's a little bit harder to
True.
see clearly.
Right. Because we live in our blind spots. That's like the number one reason we don't always figure out what we're doing.
Right.
But I just want to say something about corporations and like business. There is small business, which is you and I, and then there's corporations. So a lot of these Fortune 500 companies have to explain where they're spending their money. That's why it's public knowledge, and that's why there's a public reaction. So whether they donate to politicians, most of them do. And it's usually both sides of the aisle, just so everyone knows. It's usually both sides.
Yeah, they usually do 50-50, maybe once a hair more, but it's not significant.
Right. And it also depends on the candidate, et cetera. But so that's very common. So of course there's a personal feeling, because all money, doesn't matter who's spending it, whether it's a business or it's a corporation or it's us, is a reflection of their values, meaning what is important. So if you are a business owner or a woman or a mom and you want money spent in an ethical way, and I'm just putting that in like, not in air quotes, but whatever that looks like for you. Mm-hmm. So it might be more environmental, for instance, or it might be more local. That's more ethical. For you.
We always like to donate to like veterans because of my husband's pastor. My grandmother had MS. So like we always focus on things that have affected or influenced our livelihood.
So that's a piece of your financial power going, I'm going to make sure there's money there and I'm going to give it. And so these corporations and small businesses do that as well. And I do think that's good. Where I think the problem is that it's what's done behind closed doors that gets later revealed. That is where I think that's when the problem is.
Okay.
And politically speaking, now I know you were like, I don't even do that. I'll just say this, but politically speaking, we're seeing more transparency of people just coming out. It's not just one person, but there's many politicians out there across the globe who are saying, I'm with this, I'm not with that. And so again, that charges people up like, oh my God, I gave money to your campaign here in the US, or I voted for you, which feels like a currency. Like I actually paid to, I expect you to do what I hired you to do, kind of thing. So I think that kind of, gets people very animated. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Where I think it goes wrong for us individually with our own financial power is that we gloom and doom over the fact that either somebody didn't do what we wanted them to do, or they did something different than what they campaigned on, which happens across the globe. And then there's also that thing of like, do I have the time, the energy? I haven't even mentioned money yet, but do I have the time and the energy to say, that's it, I'm not going to participate in this? So, for instance, if you voted for somebody and then you donated to their campaign and all this other stuff, and you find out, oh my gosh, they're not doing what I wanted them to do. And what I'm going to do from now on is I'm going to vote for another candidate, and I'm going to canvass, I'm going to have the time and the energy to, go support another candidate or something like that. Those are choices. And every person I meet who does that has better money habits. And why is it? Because they get the very simple expression of put your money where your mouth is.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know something? If you're listening to these conversations and thinking, yeah, I want more spaces like this in my life, that's exactly why we built the Capital Community. It's where we keep the conversations going, exploring the emotional and energetic pulse of life, sharing tools for growth, bringing in new perspectives, and opening up the wisdom window during Soul Talks with Abby. If that sounds like your kind of space, you can learn more about it at capitalhealth.com. It's the place where growth keeps unfolding. At just $26 a month, come join the Capital Community, where wisdom grounds you and awareness helps you rise.
No, I didn't say they were rich. I just said they have better money habits. They feel better. Like I've met women, particularly moms, when they're like, looking at an election, or they're making a decision on which company they want to, they're like, oh, gonna go purchase, so I've met women who will not purchase money off of Amazon. They will not support businesses on there. They just won't do it. It's their choice. Right. And then other people who are like, oh, it's a political candidate. Oh, I don't like what this person had to say. Oh, but I like what they had to say. Another $10 to this person. And that's
Wow.
like an example of maintaining your financial power in a world that sometimes makes us feel very powerless. Like, why is it that the elephants are fighting again and we're the grass and we're getting trampled on? And I'm basically borrowing from a very deep African proverb. I don't know which nation said it, but it's true. Like, we can just feel like we're lost in a washing machine, getting just spin around and around and around. And that comes from a story that we have been taught early on in our childhood, as well as perpetuated in our relationships. So, as I said, the people who often, have the best money skills are the ones who are like, that's it, I'm not going to support this. So it is an interesting sort of perspective, but, using your money in a way that you want to is an empowered money brain, which allows you to actually become more of a money whisperer, because you're like, well, is there any information to say no? Is there any information that's going to tell me stop?
Well, and what I like about it is that even though there might have been a change in decision, right? Or a shift in perspective, it didn't necessarily mean that it affected the person in a negative fashion.
Or it did, maybe, in some cases, yeah.
But like it did, I mean, it might maybe emotionally, but it didn't seem like, because you said that they tend to have better money skills. What do better money skills look like? Like, can you explain when you look at money skills, what that looks like to you as you're like evaluating?
Yeah, there's basically like 4 basic money skills. So it's savings, it's investing, it's paying your bills, hopefully on time, and then it's really talking about your money. All lead up into financial decision making. So when I talk about their money skills, they already know how much money they have in the bank. And they have money set aside for whether it's political contributions, which not everybody does that, or it's set aside for tithing. So perhaps they are a person of faith, and so they tithe, like, where the good is at, not necessarily to their church or house of worship. Or they just know that they have money that they want to spend locally, so they have that set aside. You could call that budgeting, you can call it a spending plan, or what I would say is it's just a reflection of their values. What's important? Do they need designer shoes? Maybe they do. Depending on where they work and what they do, they might need
Some
them.
people just like pretty things. It's okay.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And then other people are like, no, I want to reduce my carbon footprint. And I want to make sure that I have money for, and, like their house is completely stocked, with whatever.
The solar panels and all the different things. Yeah. Interesting. So, I really want to kind of hit a subject on like the self-worth and how, a lot of our experiences really show and reflect over like how money shows up, how it hits our behavior. And a lot of times, some people are so stuck in the trauma to which they've experienced in the past that it's almost like there hasn't been something that's happened to somebody else, and I'm always a very strong believer that, it's like we all have our story, we all have our trauma, regardless of what various degrees to which it shows up and played into our lives. But then it's also about that healing power of how it changed how you viewed yourself, your identity, all of those different things, especially when it comes to like victimhood mentality, projecting, your certain things onto other people, etc. Because when you learn to start being more aware of it and actually doing it a lot less in your behavior, like you're not meeting things with judgment, you're not meeting things with fear, it starts really opening the gates up to just being in alignment with who you are, which then also affects authority, empowerment, etc. Now, you needed to bring us through your story, because like I could barely get through it. Just the fact that I'm like, I know what's coming, and then my brain is like trying to say the words, and I'm like, God, I don't want to say these things, but like at the same time, because it's your story. But you were profoundly affected because you lost both of your parents, and still somehow were able to turn your grief into your mission and shifting the survival, like from a survival to financial empowerment, which I just think is crazy because getting hit with the double-edged sword fucking sucks. So how old were you when you lost your parents?
So I have, that's the other thing about me. I don't look as old as I chronologically am because, nothing's better.
You didn't put an age in the box hole.
Yeah, I'm
you were
eternal.
like, I'm eternal. You were like, no, I'm eternal. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah. But basically my father got sick when I was 17 and he wasn't officially diagnosed until I was 18. And then
he was officially diagnosed with what?
Alzheimer's.
And
then he died
at the age of what? How old was he?
He died at the age of 68.
Okay. And he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's around what age?
62, 63.
Oh man, right when he's like getting into retirement zone and he's like ready to check out and enjoy life. Mm-hmm. And then boom, like it was like he didn't even get to enjoy any prepared savings for retirement or anything. That blows.
Yeah. So, and it was a very new disease, to the family. Nobody had any previous history. We didn't really know what to think, but it happened. And so we just assumed that, this will never happen again. My parents, were divorced at that point. They both lived in separate states. They died in separate states. And then my mother, she was diagnosed when I was older. And I think she officially got the diagnosis when I was around 36, 37. Okay. And then she died when I was 39.
Wow.
And it was sort of like, whoa. And it was a very different experience than any of my peers. And, it's one of those really weird situations. Like they didn't die of cancer. So we didn't get to have a lot of good conversations towards the end. It was sort of like, what can you do to pick up? And, how is the care getting managed? Where is the money going to make sure that the care is managed properly? That was really the focus. And with both of my parents, I didn't get a dime for anything. I just did everything I could to take care of them and do what I could in light of dealing with different family members. Because I had two, you have different sides of your family. You got to deal with two different sides of the situation. 100%. So,
and everybody's opinions about what you should be doing, because that's the best part.
Yeah. So everyone had an idea. Everyone had an opinion. But my mother officially died at 74. Still not old, but she passed on. So that was that.
And what was she diagnosed? What was it that she fought?
She had Alzheimer's too.
The both came out with both of them. Okay.
Yes.
So it was just massive, same illness, but just different timings.
And they manifested differently, but here's one symptom they both had, and it's actually one of the hallmark symptoms of Alzheimer's, that something's wrong, and is that you lose your sense of direction. You do not know how to get home. And they both develop that. The difference is that my father, he was a genius level IQ. He graduated from MIT, had 2 engineering degrees. He was very smart, my young. And so he was sort of able to stave off some of the symptoms, which is why we didn't catch it early on. Versus my mother was sort of a slow descent. She wasn't a stupid lady by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I don't wanted to make her sound like she married a genius, but she was like, no, she was bright. But she wasn't genius level IQ. Don't tell her that, but it's true, she wasn't. Yeah. And but she was sort of a slower thing, But I'll never forget when she said, "Oh, I don't want to drive anymore." And that was sort of the like ding, 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 ding.
Tell. That was her tell.
Yeah. And we said, well, why not? And she's like, oh, it's so stressful with the traffic. And I'm like, really? Like you've been driving these highways forever in California. You love this stuff. She's like, oh, I don't want to do it anymore.
Okay, quick little note before we keep going. If you've ever listened to the show and thought, I kind of want to carry this energy with me outside of the podcast, go check out Capital Health Shop at capitalhealth.com. We've got a mix of things in there for everybody. Oils to support what your body's moving through, customized exercise and nutrition plans, and even gift cards so that you can spread that Capital Health love. And of course, the swag. Shirts that actually say what we're thinking, such as be stronger than your excuses or run like your kids are looking for you. So if you want something that actually matches how you're showing up in your life right now, check out the Capital Health Shop. Achieve your ideal health where health meets alignment.
And that was sort of the warning sign. And
Okay.
so, yeah. And we're going to have more robot taxis in the future. So that may be good, may not be so good, depending on how that works out for people who get lost. But you could drive somebody technically to their home if they don't recognize it.
Right. Well, I mean, even just how they drive too, so, I've been a caregiver to my mother since I was 24, and I don't, she doesn't have Alzheimer's, but with her long-term use of medications, it's affected certain organ functions.
Sure.
So it's put her into that class 4 kidney disease. And then even though we don't have to deal with the dialysis and all the back and forth hospital visits right now, so far, but what's interesting is that we've noticed significant cognitive decline that's happened over the last couple of years. And so it's been hard to kind of rifle through some of that, especially for her.
Right.
But we've really had to pay attention to her driving. And so and it's not that she can't drive. It's just that I prefer her to drive during when the roads are less chaotic or less she would have during non-rush hour traffic type zoning things. And it was I also started to notice it was better for her to drive by herself, because if she had the kids in the car with her, she would tend to get more distracted and then would make more mistakes. Where if she was just kind of left in her zone, she's a lot more functional. So it's just been a little bit interesting to navigate. And then, and she's traveling 5 miles from the home. She's not traveling 20, 30 miles. She's not going for a long distance drive. It's kind of just quick little errands, right? It's like when Walgreens has their senior citizen sale, you got to get there, that type of thing. So it ends up being, but if we weren't with her or we weren't, paying attention and we didn't have an open dialogue in our house, it would be very easy for her to kind of hide as that progression increased. I know that when my grandmother, she was a smart cookie and, but at the same time, that generation, they took a lot of pride in how they represented themselves. So they learned very quickly when not to say something and bring attention to something they might be struggling with. When my grandmother, she would just get quiet or she'd just observe and she'd be interested. But there would be several times during the dinner that I noticed she got lost. It was almost, you could see it as clear as day. It's like she looked down at her plate, all of a sudden looked up, where am I? Just kind of assess the area, looked down at her plate, was like, oh, we must be eating dinner. So she kind of put 2 and 2 together. And then all of a sudden she just started, but she had a good 30 to 45 second delay in it, where you could tell that she kind of was forgot what she was doing. And so you could see the little tiny, those little tiny intricate details that makes a difference, right? It makes such a huge difference in it. How do you, how did each one, because I mean, when you were dealing with your dad, you were 17, I mean, you weren't into your career yet. And then between your mom, because when did the official money coach start becoming in? Did that play out towards?
It was after let me say this more clearly. Upon my mother's death, we confirmed that another family member had financially exploited her entire estate. This did not happen with my father's estate, but this happened with my mother's estate. And a lot of it is because of the way the wills were written and the way the assets were handled. And I'm not going to bore people to death because, basically there's 50 states and it runs differently in every state anyway. You should probably talk to an attorney.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but basically, long story short, when and this is one of my values. You steal from my family members, I will never forget you.
Yeah,
I will
absolutely.
never forget this problem. Now, that doesn't mean you don't forgive. That's a very important piece of healing. Your money and your money brain and wanting to be empowered is learning to accept that, people are human, and it
Yeah.
is not uncommon that people will steal.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, I was like, are you kidding me? This was
Yeah.
a family member she trusted, she loved and adored, and they basically took her to the cleaners and lied to us repeatedly. They kept doing lie here, lie over there, lie over there. It was just, a tough situation. So
Wow.
what I did is I should say at that time, we all got lawyers and, try to get to the bottom of what happened. And basically after about 2 years of very painful litigation, that it was determined that, basically this person intentionally delayed diagnosis, which is part of the reason they were able to move the money so quickly to them. And they liquidated her accounts. So she had money in the beginning to take better care of her. She had long-term care insurance. They refused to use any of it. They stopped the policy. They stopped her life insurance policy. We were the beneficiaries. They did a lot of damage intentionally.
Wow.
So because they didn't want to pay for the premium.
That's insane.
That
That's
is
insane.
family dynamics around money.
Yeah.
And so what I was doing to cope with my stress was I went to dance classes. So this is when we were in litigation. She had already passed away. So I was taking dance classes. And why was I doing that? Well, when you're grieving, there's a lot of stuff that gets stuck, like in your head, but also in your body. And also, not a lot of people have a lot of sympathy or can have a lot of bandwidth to give back to you when you're like, well, I'm in litigation. My mother died. A lot of people are like, "Ooh, that's crazy. That's terrible. I'm sorry to hear
Well,
that."
they don't know what to say, and on top of it, there's not really anything like to say because some people haven't even experienced what that is, so they don't have enough educational around this experience, and
Sure.
and then sometimes it's also kind of like, it's so different when someone brings up like a trauma of the past, like even if it was a survival story, just even sharing it, some people will be like, oh my God, and think that the person's like bringing up baggage, and it's like, no, actually, they're not defined by it. It just happened to be their story.
Right.
And some people don't necessarily know because they're not as familiarized with some of that level of trauma, especially if it hits like a whole, like whole nother spectrum of various degrees of trauma. Did you know that we at Capital Health have been working on an app that's never been created before? And with all the excitement around it, we've decided to give you an opportunity to become a Capital Health founder. Capital Health founders get exclusive perks, including 3 to 6 months of full access of the app, a Capital Health t-shirt, and future founder-only benefits. The app itself is designed to meet you where you are, assessing your needs and creating customized workouts and personalized nutrition tailored specifically to you. In short, it's like having a trainer, nutritionist, and energy coach in your pocket without the massive expense of hiring each one individually. Founder opportunities are limited and only are available before the launch date. So head on over to capitalhealth.com to learn more on how to become a Capital Health founder and achieve your ideal health. It's interesting because when you're dealing with, I love the fact that you were doing dancing because I am very much like harness, like let's get somatic exercise going. Let's get movement and flow and break up where those emotional blockages are, especially because sometimes, if we're not always checking in and connecting to where we're at, we didn't even realize there was a blockage there. So it's like, oh, wow, my hip doesn't move this direction as much anymore. There's probably some energy that's like hasn't gotten there, it needs to be released. But like, I love the fact that you harness like dancing because it kept you in movement. It kept you in flow. It helped you, like I love music because it really just connects me to emotions. I tell my husband all the time, like if anytime I'm in a bad mood, you could pretty much flip my switch in 2 seconds if you just put certain music on. Like,
Yeah.
like it's like, give me that music and I will it's not even an issue. He still doesn't use that, but I keep telling him, I was like, you could do that. Like,
Yeah.
you could probably get me in any mood you want if you just use music as that breaker. How do you get out of, like, because going through all of this, especially with the family member, there's angerment, there's betrayal, there's trust issues, there's
Yes.
even fear and scarcity of like what's next, because it was even like things that should have been yours got taken from you, and then even can put you into a scarcity mindset. Like, how do you get through some of those core wounds and get to a place of balance so that you can get back into your authority, so that it doesn't reflect in your wealth and abundance?
Yeah. So for me, what really worked, and this also works for a lot of my clients, is to figure out, what is it that you want now? Like, we already know what happened.
Right.
And we already know, like, what are the next steps, like in terms of, because we went to court and we lost. And basically the answer I was given to by the attorneys is, go start a new life. Like, there's nothing else that can be done at this point. And I, like, of course, what does that look like? I don't know. But like, if the goal is to start a new life, not to reclaim what you had, then you go about it in a different way. So for me, it was actually developing my financial agency. And I wanted to basically spot liars when it came to money. Like, that was my own little personal thing, because I just wanted to, I was like, I don't want to go down this road again. And so that's how I walked into dance one day, and that's when I met, I should say, I went to a workshop. It was on dance and money. And I walked in and I met my first emotional behavioral money coach. And so what we did in the workshops is we worked on rewiring our financial messages that are often very different from different family members, and how we have treated ourselves. So one of the biggest memories I have from that whole experience of that first dance workshop is that we were standing in a room, and there were like some women that looked, I mean, I like to think of them not necessarily as Stepford wives, but they are very polished. They're always in black or gray, cream. I mean, they're just, you know what I mean? Like, they're
very poised.
That's very
poised and slightly pretentious.
Slightly pretentious. They're always wearing the right amount of pearls and gold, and they're not bad people. I mean, but I'm just saying, like, when this type of person walks in the room, they're quality, right?
Right.
And they
There's
wear
a certain
the uniform
standard or expectation.
Yes. And they're not, again, no judgment against them or for them. It's just what they do.
It's no different than what we do from upbringing and behavioral reactions and the role to which, it's no different. We're all human. They just got there a different path. Like, that's fine.
And so what happened is, what I discovered is that some of these women who were very polished and have married well, is that they had come from a very bad traumatic history. And a lot of these women, I was very surprised to find out that they, had accomplished a great deal in their life. They've had families, they had moved on, but they were teenage prostitutes. They were prostituted out as children or as young ladies, and they were on drugs, and they had to make a lot of what I would say life affirming decisions. Like, do I want to keep living? How do I want to live? And so when I was standing in this room, I was like, you would never know this. Like, you would never know that you were standing next to somebody who has a massive substance abuse history and terrible childhood and trauma, because they're not coming from that area, but they were still carrying it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So even though they looked good and they sounded well-spoken, they were still literally walking around and carrying this shame and blame of, like, I don't think I'm really good with my money. Like, I have a financial advisor, I have money, I have a job, but I still feel ashamed of my actions to make money when I was on drugs. Like, they had not forgiven themselves.
Wow.
And that was sort of like a whoa moment. big moment for me, because I mean, I'll never forget, like what we did is like, it's a little bit like a trust walk. So like,
Right.
so it'd be like Abby and Jeannie are in the room, and then like maybe 200 other people. It wasn't 200, but let's just assume it's a large room. Anybody who's used drugs, step forward. Like anybody who's been abused, sexually, step forward. And we could just go on and on and on. Anybody who's had a bankruptcy, step forward. Anybody who's, lost their home, step forward, all this stuff. And it was just like, you see like people's like patterns of money in real time of what they've endured and how they survived it. Now, how many of those people were actually successful? A small handful, but how many of those actually accepted and felt that they deserved to be successful? It went down even further.
Right.
So when I look at people about like, where are you going? What is it that you want? Do you want to go in that direction that doesn't matter what your history's been with money, but you want to walk around and you look yourself in the mirror and go, I'm okay. I'm actually grateful for my life. I have a lot of respect for where I've been, and I don't need to judge anyone else because I'm doing me, and I'm okay with me. And that's a profound, powerful place to be. But that is where a lot of our financial power begins. It is being okay with the past and realizing that, you know what, I'm going to have a better future.
I think the thing that stood out for me the most is asking what you want, right? Because I believe that there's a lot of times that, it's like we'll have various goals that we're working towards, right? Like I'm very goal oriented, like constantly self-actualization, always getting to like next level of self. But at the same time, it's funny because when you're in the act of the doing, when you're so much in the masculine energy of getting the work done, because that's what we're good at, right? Like, especially, strong-abled women that are like, let's go,
Yeah.
But it's almost like they ends up being a lot of noise and a lot of busyness that then takes away from the awareness of what it is that you're actually wanting, right? And sometimes I've noticed even within myself, I've almost needed other people to like cross the line for me to determine, oh, hell no, no, that's where it stops. And this is what I want. Like like before I can make the move. Does that make sense? It's almost like I'll be too courteous and too polite. And then I won't be as intentional with what it is that I'm wanting. Like it's not what I'm creating with work and how I'm providing service to others within my, and what I do for my work, but it'll be within my personal, because I'll be focused on, the needs of the kids. And then, did you hear what I said? I said needs, not the wants, the needs. Like, so I'll be focusing and that's where I've noticed, like, that I believe stems from a like lack mentality, like a lack thereof, where I have to work on shifting that instead of focusing on the bottom line need for survive. And like, that's part of my survival, right? Of always trying to just make it right. Instead. And like, that's a little bit of poor man syndrome focused to where I've got to shift that into what it is that I want. This is why I want it. This is what I'm going to do. Like in like setting my standards for how I want to live. And that's where when you said, how do you want to live? I was like, boom, like that's a bigger difference. And the other thing too, is like my husband's want to live is different than my want to live. And that's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. But I've noticed that it was interesting because we have a family lake house that we have in Michigan, and we were talking about a couple of things. It's a family thing that my grandfather had set up for the family, and it's beautiful. And what I love is that the cousins all have the same wholesome quality of what the cottage represents and what it's supposed to be, etc. But then there's also like, my husband has said something like, well, like, and he was talking about, at some point, we could always buy something in Washington. You guys have never been there. And that's where he grew up. And it was in beautiful, like he showed us pictures, and I can't even imagine how I'll emotionally react to getting into that environment. And I just said to him, I go, honey, I don't understand why we can't have both. And why we can't buy another house in Europe or another house in a lot like, Timbuktu, like, and I just kind of went off this thing. I was like, we can create and have like whatever it is that we really want. Like I'm in the mentality of shifting that mindset now, becoming more intentional of what that goal looks like and how to
Right.
get there. That's different. I'll get that. Like I'll put my own mindset and energy into doing that. But at least I broke through the limitation aspect. Right.
Mhm,
Like it
mhm,
was like the
mhm.
limitations. And he hadn't gotten there. He thought it was more of like, here we have to pick one over the other. And I was
Right.
like, no, we do not. We do not have to pick one over the other. And I don't want to pick one over the other. I want to have it. I want to be able to be the person that has it all, that has the company, has a happy family, happy connected family, has a good marriage, and like create that solidarity and teach our children that you can strive to have all of these things and not have to be in a lack in one position of your life or another. Because
Exactly.
I think sometimes we think that like it's like, oh, okay, they have money, but then they like, their family life isn't as good. Like it's like you almost have to like think of you. There's a trade off in what it is, and I'm like, no, that's just a bullshit story that we told ourselves a long time ago and thought it was real, and that's
Sure.
stupid. I don't want to do that.
Right.
So how do you number one, I'm just going to say, like, what are some things that you could like teach us to live by in all of this really cool conversation? Because I think we hit a couple different topics that people hadn't necessarily like thought about or even considered. So I think
Sure.
their
Sure.
brains are probably cooking right now, and like, and it's like, ooh, let that simmer, like,
Yes. Yes.
But what are some things that you could tell us like to live by, or things that you live by that you think could benefit us?
So don't make a money decision when you feel awful. Like a
Mm,
lot of times people are trying to make a financial decision when they're in scarcity mode, or they don't think, there's another way around it. And so then they do that and then they just feel awful. So it feels worse. So you compound the
mm,
problem in your money brain, and it takes a little bit more time and energy to rewire it. Number one. Number two, if you don't think this person's really honest or is there for your betterment, then no, please do not invest money with them. I've run into too many entrepreneurs who were like, well, I took the money and then it was awful. It was a horrible experience. Whether they got
mm.
paid a wage that was, or not a wage necessarily, but they got paid their rate, their full rate. No, maybe they didn't. And then they end up regretting the whole thing, at the end. I admire people a little bit more when they were like, yeah, it was easy money that was coming my way. And I said no, because I knew what this person's values were, or they were clear
Mm.
enough to me that, where their allegiance lies. So that. Number three, it's really important to pay yourself, but it's also more important to know what are your numbers and what you want to do with them, because you can pay yourself and have a decent sized savings, but if you're not willing to do the next steps, which is investing or, considering what you want to do long term, then it's just money in the bank. And that maybe feels really comfortable, but money in the bank isn't going to solve the problems. Money in the bank is just another form of insurance, but it's not the best form of insurance.
Right. And it's still a
Because you
form
can
of
lose your
scarcity
money in
because
the
you're
bank.
holding it. Yeah. And you
Mhm.
and it's still a form of scarcity because you're afraid to spend it and you're hoarding it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I meet people all the time. Okay, so I just need to save up a year's worth of my salary, and it's like, well, wait a minute. It depends on your age. It also depends on what you're doing with your life, what your
Right.
health is, what the market conditions, like, so if you're somebody who's going to spend 6 years trying to save up a year's worth of money, I'd be like, what?
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair.
that's a long
Yeah.
time. You could have invested and made that back a lot sooner if you chose to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, what are some of what outside of that, like just on a you level, what are some of the things that you do that provides you joy, because joy and gratitude? Because we really focused on having the gratitude
Mhm, mhm.
to like really harness and like uplift and do that. And I'm very pro on bringing in joy. Like the
Yeah.
challenge is to give yourself joy, a little bit of joy every single day. So what are your things? What are your little vices that help bring in joy for you? And get you
One of
to
the
that
things
next
that I
level.
still love to do is dance, but what really brings me joy is helping people literally break through a lot of their own barriers or glass ceilings, because when people change how they think and feel about their money, their world becomes their oyster instead of, well, I got to keep working until I feel like, I've got like 6 medical conditions and I'm going to need a lot of, medication. I'm not going to be able to walk on my own because I practically broke my back and my knees, by sitting too much. It's like, come on, you know better.
Yeah.
Make
That's
better
crazy.
money choices.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. How can the audience find you? Where do they search to stalk you?
They find me oftentimes through LinkedIn.
Okay.
But globalmoneycoach.com is my website as well. So, and I have my own newsletter. Like there's lots of like great tips and things that I find works really well. If people are, on the money, sort of situation. And then also, since I'm not a financial advisor, if you need more support with your financial advisor or you need a different one, I know a ton of them because they're amazing people. So that's what I do. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the Capital Life today. It was fantastic having you, and we greatly appreciate all of your just knowledge, your experiences that got you to doing what you do and bringing light and awesomeness into this world.
Oh, thank you so much, Abby. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
Thanks for joining me today, where we talk about all the things that life brings. Join me next time as we go a little bit deeper, because we always do. Remember to take care of yourself, because you're somebody's everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and Facebook at Capital Health. That's KAPITOL Health. Please share with your friends and family. The Capital Life is available on all podcasting platforms except Pandora. Our goal at the Capital Life is to provide a safe place to get information when it comes to your health and wellness, especially when dealing with all of life's phases. Remember to take care of yourself, because you're somebody's everything.